You know, sometimes you just have a lot of baggage to carry around. What can I say? So I'm going to give you a little Rorschach test. I'm not sure if that's really what I'm doing. But call out emotions, not just random emotions. I'm going to show you a face, not my own, and you call out the possibilities for emotions. And because we are all emotionally aware people, we know that it is not one size fits all. Okay? So here's our first face.
Content. Happy.
Nice. Happy, contentment, proud. Mutter, mutter, mutter. I'm not sure what all the rest of you said, but I heard things. All right. So a small change in emotion. Worry, sad. Upset. Concerned. Sorry. Oh, that's a good sorry face. Okay, big word girl. All right. Here's another emotion. Calm.
Content.
Surprise. Well, it will be surprised right now, because that. But this could be quiet surprise. This could be Norwegian surprise. I love you, Mirth. So we have, these are a little bit harder because this is, contentment is, I mean, how do you show contentment? It's like the lack of worry or extreme things. It's just like, I'm content. Neutral. But surprise, oh yes, we do surprise well. Oh, this is a fun one. Amused. Funny. Giddy. Maybe mocking. Happy. Okay. Silly. Excited. We're going! Yeah. Oh, that was universal. Oh, yeah. Kind of upset, kind of disappointed. What was that? Pensive. Yes, first I thought you said handsome, and I thought, well, yes, but that's not really an emotion that I know of. Oh, she's sleeping on that one. Okay. How about this? What do you see? Content. She's more content, isn't she? Maybe she looks like she's kind of pensive to me. Kind of dreamy, curious. Looking, seeing through someone, I think. Self what? Self-confident. And curly. How about him? What do we see? Upset. In pain. Stomachache. Ugh. Exhausted. Not one more thing. Yeah. You could probably tell me a story, couldn't you, about Freddie? That's his name. So, Freddie came home from school and was feeling upset, disturbed. Nice. Just a couple more. Oh, this is a good one. Disappointed, maybe stubborn. Doesn't it kind of like, you can't make me? Or maybe I'm the only one that makes that face. This is easier. Okay, this is delighted, eh? It's a never-ending bag, I should just say. He's got something going on. He's got some anger issues, doesn't he? Or in pain. He could have a toothache. What was that? Indignant. Ooh, good word. I could make up a story about what happened that made him feel so indignant. So suppose that you are in a room and George here comes in and he's wearing this face. We have some options. We can look at the face and go, well, don't you have an attitude? Yeah, you're probably mad at me, aren't you? Because I was late. yeah, I'm pretty sure you're mad at me. And you know what? I'm not even going to talk to you because you're always mad at me for stupid reasons. We just made up this whole big story that has we don't know. Maybe it is a toothache. Maybe his bicycle tire just went flat and he's like, oh, I have to push my bike home. Who likes to do that? But we tell stories about emotions that we think we understand in someone else. We barely understand our own emotions, much less somebody else's, unless we ask questions. So part of the reason that you were able to sort of call out good guesses about happy, not so happy, probably bewildered, or whatever, is because of empathy. One of our finely tuned superpowers as humans is empathy, to be able to sort of project to someone else to try to understand them without projecting all our crazy stuff on them, because they don't deserve that, right? But our ability to look at someone who has this face on and say, well, you look like you're having a nice time today. And starting a conversation, or, gosh, you look like you're having a hard day. And we're able to say that empathetically. We're taking a guess, and we might be wrong. No, I'm not having a bad day. It's just my face got stuck this way like my mother always said it would. You know, that could be the answer. But we're able to empathize and to make wild guesses, and sometimes they're not so wild. Sometimes we're pretty intuitive. We're able to pick up on that tiny little shift in someone's emotional vibe space. So we're going to be talking more about this later with the adults, and I wanted the kids to have an opportunity to realize that we do have this. It's really a superpower to be able to empathize. And empathizing is not feeling sorry for someone. It's not poor you. Empathy is feeling with someone. I understand. I may not know what you're going through. It might look like something that happened to me, but I don't know how you're handling it. But I can be here and I'll sit with you and you can talk to me if you want. And that's a really important superpower that we humans can offer each other. Our dogs and cats, well, not cats, dogs do it automatically and without reservation. Cats would like to know when the next feeding is. Each week we engage in a practice of compassion as we pause for a time of quiet reflection to contemplate the life that is larger than ourselves and to hold one another in sacred trust. Today we think of Don and Sue Sherman as he continues with some pretty significant health challenges. Yvonne and Jessa Stocker, as Yvonne is taking care of Jessa, again, through serious health challenges. We lift up Camilla, our bookkeeper, her godson Melvin, who is going to have a very, very long road from his motorcycle accident. That there's significant brain injury, and so we hold them in our thoughts. Also, it went out on email this week, but for those of you who may not be on the email, member Eleanor Howard passed away on Tuesday. I've been in contact with her daughters. We're planning a memorial service for November 2nd, but I don't have a time yet. And so I will let you know as soon as I know more. But let's hold her daughters, Maureen and Diane, in our hearts. For all of these and for all the concerns and sorrows and the joys that we bring into this space, let us enter a time of quiet. Spirit of community, in which we share and find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward one another, seeking to bring into our circle of concern all who need our love and support, those who are ill, those who are in pain, either in body or in spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. We are part of a web of life that makes us one with all humanity, one with all the universe. We are grateful for the miracle of consciousness that we share, the consciousness that gives us the power to remember, to love, to care. May it ever be so in our lives. Blessed be. The reflection this morning is entitled, What's Your EQ? Since I craft sermon titles and descriptions 4 to 6 weeks before I'm actually preaching them, oh, the tyranny of the newsletter, I try to leave myself as much room as possible while still providing some clue for myself and for you of what the topic will be. In this case, I noticed that the autumnal equinox was this weekend. And since I make a practice of noticing the Earth's holy days, I thought a focus on the equinox would be just the thing for this Sunday. From there, other similar words with similar meanings came to mind. Equity, equality, equanimity, good Unitarian Universalist words. In addition to sharing the first 3 letters, each of these words speaks to balance. Equanimity speaks to our inner balance, a peaceful groundedness that creates an internal harmony. Equity and equality point to balance among people, and if we stretch our imaginations, to more than people. And of course, the equinox is the balancing of light and dark, day and night, in our planet's journey around the sun. Equanimity, equity, and equinox. Balance within, among, and beyond us. I recognize a potential 3-point sermon when I see one. So let's begin by honoring the day. The equinox, the momentary balance between light and dark, in the reassuring seasonal cycles that capture the planet's journey around the sun. As creatures who favor light, we describe the Earth's quarter days in sunlight. The shortest day being the winter solstice, the longest day 6 months later with the summer solstice, December and June in the northern hemisphere. Between the shortest and longest days is the equinox, equal day and night. Between June and December, the autumnal equinox, also called Mabon or Litha among some earth-centered religions, falls around September 21st. Remarkable coincidence. On the Earth's return journey, the vernal equinox, also called Ostara, happens around March 21st. The 4 points in our seasonal year, the solstices and the equinoxes, are how humans have oriented ourselves in time for generations beyond memory. Now, between those quarter days of the year are what we call the cross-quarter days, that fall in approximate 6-week intervals between the quarter days and are based in agricultural rhythms that capture seed time and harvest. The cross-quarter day between now and the coming of the winter solstice is Samhain, or All Hallows. You might know it as Halloween, the last harvest. The Earth's holy days are touch points for us, even and perhaps more so when few of us are engaged in actual seasonal planting and harvesting or animal husbandry. Attuning ourselves to the rhythms of the earth helps to balance mind and body. It's a reminder that we are embodied creatures. We are not just mobile brain cases. It's kind of helpful to have this big old planetary reminder a couple times a year. And so this is your fall reminder. Find some balance in your life. If you're at a loss for some ideas, what is balance? I suggest you open your Bible to Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and sing along with the 60s group, The Birds, for everything there is a season, a time to laugh, a time to cry. There are a whole bunch of suggestions. Some of them don't do the whole killing part, don't do that. But the other things, laughing and crying, balance yourself with those. Because truly, life is meant to be a salted caramel candy. Bitter dark chocolate with salt on the outside and sweet creamy caramel on the inside. That is my theological insight for this day. But we do need balance. So isn't it interesting how balance does not stay in a neat little column? I started out talking about balance beyond us with the planet, with the equinox, the cycles and seasons, and yet here we are talking about balance within ourselves. I think we will find that the third category, balance among others, is equally adept at crossing borders. So let me interject another EQ word here, equilibrium, also related to balance. If you've ever had an inner ear issue that disrupted your equilibrium, you know that the effect that that can have. Although disrupted equilibrium can be uncomfortable and disorienting, there are times when it can be just what you need to get out of the routine, open up to different ways of thinking. Have you ever watched little kids twirl around in circles until they fall down, completely dizzy and giddy? More often than not, as soon as their head stops spinning, they're right back at it. There is a wonderful abandon to the intentional disruption of our equilibrium. It doesn't have to be something to cause discomfort or fear. Sometimes we need to balance our balance with a little imbalance. You probably shouldn't quote me on that. When I asked you, what's your EQ? Perhaps your first thought was related to music and sound engineering, equalizing the sound on your stereo by adjusting the bass and treble. You see, it matters not only what we hear, but how we hear it. In our setting here in worship, your emotional response to how you hear my voice impacts how you receive the message. So Chris, let's play with the EQ a little bit. So how about bringing down the treble, raising the bass, and I'll say something profound. Worry and fear do not move us, they paralyze us. Only love moves us to do the impossible. I sound quite authoritative, don't I? And a little bit like I got trapped in a coffee can. So let's switch that out and ditch the bass and bring up the treble a little bit. You're going to love the sound of my voice here. This is really the voice of authority, isn't it? Yes. May I please maybe go out if it's okay? Maybe now. You have an emotional response to the tinny little voice. It's like this is the voice that comes through when you put a seashell to your ear. It's a tiny little voice from far away. Okay, make me normal again, Chris. And that's another superpower, is making me normal. You're still working on it? Is that what you just said? And he ducked at that point, just so you know. Your emotional response to my message may be more truly connected to how you hear it rather than the content of what I say. And we haven't even talked yet about the filters in your own brain that have an impact on how you hear a message. If you're feeling overwhelmed, then any suggestions that I make seem like unreasonable demands. You'll have an emotional response that is not necessarily related to the content of the message. The response is the result of your own filters. Wow. Imagine how different our world could be if everyone knew to just take a second to check their own filters and assumptions before having an emotional reaction to a message. Wow. All right, so let's check in with what we've learned so far, because I was a teacher for a long time and I find that useful. So, EQ has to do with balance, and we talked about the balance being within, among, and beyond. I have some boxes that nest beautifully. I also need one more set of arms, but that's beside the point. So, if we think about our balance within, our EQ within, that's the equanimity piece. That's that loving kindness, peaceful and at ease. So that's going to be our little box, because that's the thing that we have the most possible control over, is our own equanimity. We don't have control over a lot of life circumstances, but we do have control over how we respond to those circumstances, how the emotions are carrying us along, or we choose to put an oar in the water and stop some of that. Okay, you get it. I won't belabor that. So then the next size box will be our EQ among people, among other inhabitants of this world, which actually there's a lot more inhabitants than humans. So we're going to expand that to all of it. But interpersonal communication is what we're going to put in here. And then in the big box, it's the beyond us. It's those seasonal cycles and changes and things that the earth is just doing because it's what the earth does. And we have zero control over changing, say, the orbit of the earth. But if you were at the climate strike, then you know we have some control over other things. But it's mostly little box control, right? So, in this process, yes, I can count boxes. I really can't. Okay. So I'm going to put our boxes in here because they're all connected. We are not separate from all of it. We sometimes feel like we are separate beings, but we're just not. We are connected in so many ways to all of it, to other people, to the rest of life. And in order for balance to really be achieved, is to get to work on the whole package, all the pieces, working on ourselves, establishing our EQ, getting balanced, establishing more balance in our interpersonal communications with others that extends beyond our immediate circles to circles and circles and circles and circles, which has a beneficial impact on the all of it, which is the bigger box. So when you are thinking about what did Michelle talk about, it's the boxes, okay? Boxes and faces, that's what we're doing today. All right. We also learned that EQ is partly understanding that to hear a message is to be impacted by how we hear it as well as what we hear. So it is time for us to add another layer of exploration to EQ. As I was looking for an image for the order of service, Google very helpfully suggested images and articles about emotional intelligence, with the shorthand being either EQ or sometimes EI. Researchers Peter Salovey and John Mayer coined the phrase, and they offer the most concise definition. There are lots of really wordy definitions, but these really are the most concise that I could find. So it's a two-part deal. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions. And then part two, to recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of others. Now maybe that feels, the influence word might be making you feel a little squirmy. Does it make you feel squirmy, like I'm going to influence your emotions, I'm going to mess with you? Yeah, that's not what we mean. So influencing emotions, whoops, I had one ready, is that empathy piece, where we notice that someone is having an emotion And we don't run from it. We don't try to fight at it going, well, you certainly came in here with a face on. It's looking for understanding. Wow, you seem upset. Can I help you with something? I mean, it doesn't have to be, we don't have to take lots of big wild guesses of what's going on for someone, but noticing that perhaps we can have an impact, we can influence this person's frame of mind, their mood, to be a little less of this and a little more of this, equanimity. Oh, it's an EQ word. It's almost like I plan it. This is the empathy piece, right? Okay, so faces and boxes. It's all you have to remember. We recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions. Emotions are powerful, and we can get swept along. And it can feel like there's no way out of an emotion. But I think what I read? I think it's 45 seconds is the amount of time that you're really immersed in an emotion. And then after about 45 seconds, you can make some choices. So that might be where the count to 10 thing comes from. This intuition of don't act yet. You're having an emotional thing and try to just breathe through it and see if you're still there. But that also works with the intentionality piece. We can choose to remain angry or sad or whatever the emotion is that we are inside. After about 45 seconds, we can either make a new decision, change our focus, distract ourselves, and try to get into a different mindset, or we can just decide, you know what, I'm really mad. I think I'm going to stew about this for a while. That's a decision, okay? I'm not saying that things like depression are decisions, those kind of emotions. That is not where I'm going today. These are the types of emotions of interaction emotions. Okay? Empathy is the result of recognizing and understanding our own emotions and the emotions of others. As I said earlier, it's not feeling sorry for somebody, and it's not claiming that you understand exactly what they're going through, because that's just not true. It's the ability to see another's pain and allow them the space that they need to move through it. So from my reading, I gleaned that there are 5 components to emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-regulation, also known as self-management, motivation, empathy, and social skills or relationship management. So this is the kind of list that makes me curious. Do these skills and qualities exist in groups as well as in individuals? Are people with skills in relationship management also likely to buy a certain car or use a certain mouthwash? Or might they share common values? Is there a category for group emotional intelligence? My intuition tells me that it is likely, since birds of a feather do flock together, and I do know something from communication of how groups can form cohesion, which to a certain point is healthy until it becomes groupthink, and then it is not healthy anymore. So if the positive application is true, that groups can have these emotional intelligences, if the positive can be true, then the negative application must also be true. Those who share deficiencies in certain areas of emotional intelligence are likely to be comfortable in groups of others like them. That just sent me down a rabbit hole that I spent most of yesterday afternoon chasing. And we might wonder how we might use that hypothesis when communicating with people who have different emotional intelligence. We're not saying one of us is an A plus and one of us is a D minus. We just have different emotional intelligences. There are a lot of possibilities here. And just like any skills, we're better at some things than others. So I started thinking about that, and I thought, well, how would this play out, say, with our mission? You know, our mission as far as how we are identified as a group in the community. And not wanting to put you on the spot, I'll put it up front. We challenge ourselves in the community to foster more compassion and justice in the world. So let's see if we can identify components of emotional intelligence in this statement that we aspire to define us as a group. Challenging ourselves takes a certain amount of self-awareness and self-management, a willingness to admit that we don't have it all together and that we are always learning and growing. As a group, that actually shows some emotional resiliency, the capacity to recognize when we fall short of our best efforts and correcting our course. As individuals, this can be a teensy bit trickier, since we attach a little more emotional energy in being what we aspire to be. We like to be right. If we see something in ourselves that is less than ideal, or we're called out for something, it can make us feel defensive and feel attacked. And that could lead to a response that does not exactly endorse our emotional maturity. The reverse situation can also be true. A group of individuals may have their emotional act together, being all self-differentiated and compassionate as individuals, but some new energy takes over when the group feels threatened and they don't manifest those areas of emotional intelligence as a group. I think you can see how this has the potential of creating conflict in a lot of different ways. So let's go back to our mission statement. We challenge ourselves and the community to foster more compassion and justice in the world. So we've established that challenging ourselves shows some self-awareness. Challenging the community shows some motivation, requires some social skills, a little relationship management. Fostering compassion and justice requires empathy. So our mission statement actually demonstrates a pretty high emotional intelligence, at least that we aspire to. Whether we get there or not changes probably with the weather. How we live it out, and whether we use it as a tool or a bludgeon, determines our individual emotional intelligence as well as that of the group. So perhaps you are more aligned with general intelligence, IQ, than you are emotional intelligence, EQ. All of this talk about emotions might be making you nervous. Maintaining a rational distance might be more your thing. And so let me say that EQ and IQ are not enemies. They're not opposites. They're two halves of a whole. And just the same way that it's helpful to have right brain and left brain function, I think it's helpful to have IQ and EQ. One may feel more natural to us, but both are vital to our well-being, as individuals, as a group, as a faith community. So we're going to return briefly to our EQ words: equanimity, equilibrium, equity, equality, equinox. I have to say, as I was typing these, every time I did an EQ word, it started looking wrong. I'm like, did I spell that right? Because you just don't write EQ words a lot. I'm like, what have I done? These words all hint at balance of some kind. Within, small box. Among, larger box. Beyond ourselves, really, really large box. We achieve balance within through equanimity and can experience a loss of balance through intentional disrupted equilibrium. We promote balance among ourselves and others through practices of equity and equality, making room for everyone at the table. And we widen our perspective when we pay attention to the rhythms of nature, the seasonal cycles that are way beyond us, as we note the equinox, the turning of the wheel. Now, this could be the end of a feel-good sermon, an affirmation of emotional intelligence, and at least the occasional balance in your life. Yeah, that would feel good, wouldn't it? Just tied it all up with a pretty bow. You've probably guessed that's not really the end. Because as much as I like to help you feel good, and I like you to leave worship with renewed strength to face the week, I also like to leave you with something to think about, something to wrestle with, or just something you hadn't considered before. So here it is. As I was preparing for today, I got to looking at the principles that define and guide us as Unitarian Universalists. For those of you who may not have these handily at mind, they can be found just before the first hymn in the gray hymnal. Feel free to look later. I'm going to project the one that captured my attention here on the screen. It's our second principle. We covenant to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. This principle has probably been the foundation for much of the justice work that we've engaged in for decades, and it was written to reflect the fundamental core of both Unitarianism and Universalism for over 500 years. So why would I want to mess with a bedrock principle like this? Well, partly because I'm who I am. As a person who enthusiastically embraces change, I like a new challenge. But also because it is becoming increasingly clear to me that we need to open our perspective if we are serious about being caring and engaged members of the Earth family. So perhaps you know that in addition to work being done to expand the principles to include an eighth principle that focuses on dismantling oppressive systems, there's also been considerable conversation about revising our first principle from affirming and promoting the inherent worth and dignity of every person to that of all beings. So that's the kind of perspective I think we need to bring to our second principle. What if it read, and I recognize that this first draft is pretty clunky, but there are 250,000 UUs to help me wordsmith it. What if it read, we covenant to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human and more than human relations. Justice, equity, and compassion within, among, and beyond us. I wonder how that would impact how we live on the world if we were promoting justice, equity, and compassion. I mean, it would be great if we got to even humans, but what if it included the land, trees, bees, all of it? So, I think that we need to adjust our EQ to all three settings: inner, among, beyond, the work that encompasses all of life. You can argue with me later.